Hello. Are you a Marvel zombie? Are you craven? The Disney Plus TV shows haven't been enough? Are you ready to be back in the theaters? America, other countries, catch up. Vax yourself. Vax yourself. My co-hosts are looking at me like, you're crazy. I don't know. We have this format. We're supposed to fill up this amount of time while music plays. Hopefully this is your first time to the show and you know what the deal is. It's going to be great. We're back in Marvel. We're back in the theaters on. Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, show about hot takes and hot tasty pancakes, where we're back in theaters, Marvel fans. Man, I like a woman who kills her husband.
Okay, all right. Not where I thought it was going.
The definition of Black Widow.
Also doesn't. I mean, yeah. Okay, I see it. I see it now. Okay.
there's the line of thought there.
I got it.
That was a terrible opening. I'm so sorry, loyal listeners. This is Pop-O-Holics. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined by my two best friends,
Chris Conkling
and Brian Dupree.
And on the show, what do we do? Well, we have our weekly uploads, which is where you can find us talking about the latest goings-on in pop culture. But this is a main topic episode where we review a film. We usually theme our months, as you heard our opening main theme stuff. This is a new month. We were on hiatus for the in observance of Christian being drunk in Missouri, and us taking a break from the show. But we have a little bit of an awkward month here. But we're gonna be talking about this episode, which is the main topic, which I'm trying not to say, even though you clicked on the title and you know it. We are going to be talking about Loki, and then we're going to figure out something else to talk about at the end of the month.
We'll see what happens.
But this episode, my goodness, finally, we're back in theaters, and this Marvel movie has been delayed for a year due to the pandemic, and it is available on Disney Plus as well as movie theaters, and it is Black Widow.
You don't know everything about me. I've lived a lot of lives before I was an Avenger, before I got this family. I made mistakes choosing between what the world wants you to be and who you are. Go back to where it all started.
Where did you think I was all this time?
That is from the trailer of Black Widow, directed by Cate Shortland, written by Eric Pearson, the score by Lorne Balfe. Am I pronouncing that right?
Balfe?
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a Dutch man. Balfe?
Lorne Balfe?
Lorne Balfe. With a budget of $200 million, it grossed $88 million its first weekend and is very much on the climb. It's probably more than that at this point, based on what we're seeing. And based on when this comes out, of course. And it stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence
Pugh,
David Harbour, O.T. Fagbenle, William Hurt, Roy Winston, and Rachel Weisz. So we got some newcomers to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And what are we going to be talking about? Before, because this movie just came out, as per usual, we will not be spoiling it. We're going to do our overall impressions of the film. We've talked at length about our history with the Marvel films. We have a whole Phase 1, 2, and 3 recap, as well as an Endgame, like, super discussion. That's like 4 hours. You can check out our backlogs. So we're just going to talk about this film before spoilers. And then once we jump into spoiler talk, we will talk about our favorite moments and some spoiler thoughts on this movie in the context of the MCU. But let's delay no further. Chris, we're going to start with you. You're the biggest Marvel fanboy here. You literally said that they're your favorite team or something. I didn't know there was teams in like film universes. But
I'm just equating it to like a sports team. Like you get excited when things that you like do well, you know?
We're sitting recording this in your room as it is a special occasion. And you have about 800 figurines, and I would say like 85% of them are Marvel related.
And just to be clear, the ones here are a small portion from what I understand, from what I've seen from the rest of the house. The displayed ones are only a small section.
Yeah, I do have some packed because my wife and I are currently in the process of moving. So you would be right.
So you're a big Marvel fanboy. You're going to have the brightest opinion on any of these movies, as per usual, which is expected. We're not mad at you about it. If you are mad, Pop-O-Holicscast@gmail.com.
Yell at me about my personal tastes.
Yeah, or throw it in the comments on YouTube. We should fight about it, Get at where's the DCU head? Snyder Cut! Release the Snyderverse. Or whatever the current hashtag is. We're not talking DCU. We're talking Black Widow. It's been a while. You've been seeing the Disney Plus shows. You're all amped up. You're back in theaters. Second movie back in theaters. That Marvel logo plays. Christian gives a little hoorah.
That was a great moment.
And the
I have
theater
to say,
exploded.
So
Christian really kind of like incited our entire theater by giving a little woo at the very end of the Marvel fanfare.
Because you could feel it. You
Yeah.
could feel
It was
it
so exciting.
in the theater. You could feel it playing.
It took a moment, though. It took a moment for people to like register that you had done that, but then give in to their feelings and just like scream.
Applause,
you know?
like,
Like
screams.
full-blown applause after the Marvel logo.
Yeah, that was a fun moment.
And then
Definitely.
smash cut backstory. Anyway. So Chris, your thoughts on Black Widow?
So I've had the opportunity to see the film twice now, and I have to say I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I think that it isn't like mind-blowing high tier Marvel. It's not, and it's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be what I would call like an event film. Whereas Endgame and Infinity War are kind of like the conclusion of a giant comic book crossover. This is supposed to be a standalone, very contained film, right? And it's long overdue as well. Black Widow should have had her own film a decade ago. But what I really like about this movie is that I think it provides some of the most visceral and well choreographed fight scenes at the end we've ever seen in the MCU, even compared to like the Winter Soldier. Like when the Winter Soldier came out, we were like, well, that seems pretty intense. But I think these were more adult than we've ever seen in the MCU before. I really like the family dynamic between Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova, and then Melina and Alexei as well. They have this very nice, sweet kind of chosen family unit, or maybe forced family unit is a better way to describe it. There was a lot to like about this movie. It does have its flaws. I think the CGI is lacking in a couple of places. It didn't seem, again, like it was the highest quality Marvel has to offer, but I think the performances are well done. Scarlett Johansson, as always, is delivering. And then Florence Pugh and David Harbour are just fucking standouts in this film. Like, I'm very excited that at the very least, Florence Pugh is going to be continuing in the MCU. We don't know how far David Harbour is going to be moving along, but both of them gave great performances. David Harbour is very charming and funny and a joy to watch in the movie. But yeah, it had some good action set pieces. It was a fun time at the theater. Brian, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I had a great time with this movie. I think, like you said, Scarlett Johansson, she's been great throughout this series. I really appreciated getting her backstory and getting her some of... I felt the emotional stuff in this movie actually played pretty well, given how many new characters we had in the short amount of time to find out who they are and their backstory. I can't say enough about Florence Pugh and David Harbour adding a beautiful levity and joking tone to this movie. Even some like meta jokes about Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff as someone who has known the world over and who people have seen on screen. She's like making fun of. It feels very meta.
As Yelena Belova puts it, as a girl as a woman that little girls worship in the film.
Right.
Being an Avenger and all.
Yeah, so I really appreciated how, because it's this kind of backstory, self-contained, it can make fun and poke fun at the Marvel Universe in a bit, and I'm always there for meta jokes. I think the plot, it does a really good job of, like you said, it's not an event movie, but it is big enough in scale that the stakes feel real, and
Definitely.
especially with where the movie starts and kind of the underlying implications of what the Black Widow is and what the Red Room is and what the villain is doing, it's pretty dark. So to your point about like dark themes, it doesn't always lean into it, but it's always underneath this childhood trauma, trafficking of people. They're doing a lot there. And even when the movie gets, Marvel absurd, I still had a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see, like, I would like to see David Harbour and Florence Pugh both in future Marvel movies, even Rachel Weisz.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but
No.
before the movie, I pointed this out to Christian. I thought this was really interesting. There was a trailer for a rated R film in our screening prior to going into the film, and I was like, that's
Surprising.
really weird, considering that Marvel movies are usually aimed more toward, like, I don't know, children, young adults, and of course adults as well.
It's essentially young adult.
Right, basically. But, watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, this is the first time in a theater where I don't think I would take someone younger than like 13 to go see a Marvel movie. Like
Really?
for a lot,
I feel like Infinity War is
they-
pretty dark.
I don't
There's some dark stuff. in
maybe, but they talk about some things in this movie, and some ideas and concepts are presented that I don't know if I would want to present to anybody younger than maybe like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've ever really considered that in a Marvel film. And yeah, there's been like cursing and stuff in the Marvel films before, but in terms of like conceptual things,
Yeah.
like presenting ideas to children for real things that exist in the world, real atrocities that take place in the world.
Sure.
I don't know if I would recommend like younger than 12, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, so just to wrap up on non-spoilers, I would say this is probably middle-of-the-road MCU for me. The way Christian talks about it, this very much hits that bar of being enjoyable enough for me to have not regretted seeing it. I'll probably watch it again at some point in the future. And yeah, it's enjoyable, as enjoyable as it needs to be without being mind-blowing, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good summation. I think this movie is such a mixed bag of things that are really working and things that really aren't. I think off of first viewing, just the set pieces leave so much to be desired from a movie like this, where I think you get some of the best hand-to-hand combat in Winter Soldier, any of the Russo brothers stuff, even the Marvel series that came out. There's better action set pieces in Captain Falcon Man, Winter Boy, that Disney Plus show. The set pieces in that show are far and away way better than this. And that show's not even that great in my opinion. But the set pieces are at least more interesting. These have a lot more CG, and there's not a lot of stuff that's really well thought out, in my opinion, as far as like just being interesting. It's just like an uninteresting mess of CG that's happening, 70% of the time. There's a couple of memorable moments, but nothing to write home about. And then on top of that, you're looking at the story that's propelling all these it's an event film where you should have all these big explosions and stuff, and we expect that, is a mixed bag. I mean, you're getting really great stuff from David Harbour. You're getting Rachel Weisz is, in my opinion, a little underutilized for how good she is in this film. You're also getting, and I looked up the pronunciation. It is O.T. Fagbenle. And he's underutilized. He shows up and you automatically like, this guy's on fire, and he's barely in it, which is such a disappointment.
Maybe for like 5 minutes total he's in the movie.
Maybe.
And he's got charisma. He's great. He brings great comic moments.
And he's got great chemistry with Scarlett Johansson.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
For sure.
And as much as I do like Florence Pugh as Yelena, and I really think this movie is a vehicle to kind of sell her on as a character to potentially replace Black Widow.
She'll be the Black Widow moving forward.
Exactly. I think it did a serviceable job setting that up, but I think she's okay, but her and Scarlett Johansson never felt really that enigmatic that you feel between Scarlett Johansson and Chris Evans in the Winter Soldier film, or even as she has in this film with Rick Mason as the character.
Really? I felt like the two of them had like a very real sibling dynamic. And I mean, that's hard for me to say. I don't have siblings, but like, just it seemed like a genuine younger and older sister dynamic. Sure. The younger sister being a little more antagonistic, and the older sister kind of just like rolling with those antagonistic punches. Like,
I think it mostly works. It just doesn't feel, I don't think, as good as stuff that's happening in this film and that's happened elsewhere in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the character of Black Widow, as has been the case for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe up until probably Infinity War and Endgame, I just feel is still like, I mean, she gets some cool moments, so it's not all terrible, but it's just such a mixed bag. It's just not a complete whole thing. I put this firmly in Ant-Man and the Wasp territory of films that are for what it could have been. There's so many cool ideas going on, and I just think it's a mixed bag, which is a little disappointing.
I do want to say, I'm trying to find the actress's name, but the actress who played young Florence Pugh was incredible casting, and I totally believed that was
Violet McGraw.
Violet McGraw was amazingly cast as a younger version of Florence Pugh.
And I think while we're talking about the younger casting, I think Mila Jovovich's daughter played a young Natasha Romanoff, if I'm correct.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ever Anderson.
Ever Anderson is her name.
Both of them were really good as well. I thought the movie starting there, I think I was maybe a bit sweeter on it than you guys were, but I thought it started off like pretty emotionally heavy. It didn't start where I thought it would, and then it took us to some like immediately like some pretty heavy places.
Loved
right
the
off
beginning
the
of the movie. Loved it.
So yeah, I just think overall it's a bit it's all the meh. It's all the meh of the film, and it just really disappoints with the spectacle for me because it's like I think the characters are serviceable enough that if the spectacle's good, it's like cool, I'm totally down.
Yeah.
But there are some straight up like bad shots and weird shots that we'll get into. Like when we think favorite moments, I'm going to talk about goofs of like this is just silly stuff, and I directly compare it to also thematically. I compare it to F9. And I'm like, F9 had better set pieces than this. And the story is just as ridiculous. We only care more because these characters are more well established.
Right. That's what it comes down to.
Sure.
And better fleshed out in this movie as in connected to like other films. But to me, my big takeaway is I saw F9 last week. I saw this movie, and I think they're equally good and bad. Like I think it's perfect. Like we are back in the theaters. This is America's. This is the
state
standard
of American cinema.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't
Yikes.
argue with that, unfortunately.
Which is leaving a little bit to be desired in a couple different ways, especially since like I'll wait till spoilers. I've rambled enough, but yeah, I give it a huge meh. Didn't hate it for sure, and there's enough here that it's worth seeing.
So there is a question Danny Lopez, he's been on our show before, went to the theater to see the movie with us. And one of the questions that I asked him on the way home was, and loyal listeners, you can take this however you want, but I think it's fair to compare these two films. Did you like this movie more than Captain Marvel? In terms of female-led Marvel pictures, which did you prefer more? I personally enjoyed this more than Captain Marvel. And yes, that probably comes down to the fact that I'm closer to the Natasha Romanoff character. We've seen more of her in the MCU, but I think in terms of quality overall, I think this is a better film than Captain Marvel was. How do you guys feel about that comparison? Like, where would you...
It's tough because I think if you took the story of this film and then the set pieces of Captain Marvel, I think it would be the best female-led superhero movie. Because Captain Marvel, I think, spectacularly has some very memorable moments. And she's just a more interesting character with kind of her power set. But I'd say overall, I'd probably take this one over for very similar reasons. That and I don't think Brie Larson didn't have a lot to go off of that was as good. Like she had CG young Sam Jackson. Right. It just didn't have...
which is great.
It was fine, but you didn't have that new, you have a lot of new faces in here and a lot of faces we know from other things. I think there's more characters in this film that make it worth coming back to.
And so I think I like Captain Marvel more than most people did at the time. But I think the difference here is that Black Widow, even though it has kind of a big scale at times, we know where our lead character goes in the future. So it can only be so big. Whereas Captain Marvel, not only is she one of the most overpowered characters in the MCU, they're also trying to reset a lot of things in her movie and create a lot of bigger lore that is going to have implications later. So I just think it's trying to do a lot more, and because of that, it takes a bigger swing. But because of that, maybe doesn't land all the punches that it's trying to throw. So I'd probably say on first watch, I prefer Black Widow as well.
I'd say they're pretty equal, though, in my level of, man, can they please just nail one of these movies a lot better and make it top tier? It's really sad. But let's move on. We'll move on into spoilers starting now. So here's the bumper. Bum, 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 bum. So what were some of our favorite memorable moments from this? Brian, let's start with you.
I just want to come back to all of the comedic bits. Florence Pugh commenting on the classic Scarlett Johansson pose and that coming back multiple times. That sort of stuff made me, to your point earlier, they felt like sisters, just like giving each other shit, knowing how to push each other's buttons. So I really liked all of the stuff between them. David Harbour, even though he starts off as the way we're presented to him, it seems like he's more than willing on some level to just give away his daughters, and in as far as they are his daughters. But seeing his character fleshed out after spending all this time in prison, wanting to relive his glory days, and then really feeling heavy guilt about what he's done to his daughters and repeatedly trying to express that to them, and it just ends up being a gag in itself, that I thought was really well done. And
that is a great payoff at the end, though, where
doesn't even go
Natasha
for it.
Romanoff is like,
Do you have something to
"Do you
say?
have something to say?" And he's like, "I would just mess it up," and he just holds his hand out to hold her hand.
It's
a
so
good
sweet.
moment.
Like
It's the best parts of this movie.
I think so.
Is their family dynamic
Agreed.
that goes through. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that for me are the standouts. The action, I'm in agreement that there wasn't really any standout action set pieces that I was really
Surprised to hear you guys say that, because my opinion is, I mean, in terms of like big action, I agree with you. Like the set pieces aren't as grand, I think, as what we've seen before. But like this is some of the best fight choreography we've ever seen.
I don't
in
know,
any Marvel.
dude. Count-
The hand-to-hand combat is insane. In
Next
this
time
movie,
you
bro.
watch, and there are a lot of cuts that happen, but if you look at what the Russo brothers did with Winter Soldier, they had the dude from the Raid Redemption come on and help them do hand to hand. And there's so much visceral things in this. There's some cool moments, but just start counting cuts. Just start counting cuts, Chris. When you're watching any of these
All
action
right.
type, you're up to 100. I did this in the worst of the Fast and Furious movies.
when we were watching the last one together, we were playing a game where we'd yell cuts, and it just got to
Be like 1, 2,
absurd
3,
level.
4, 5, 6, 7, and that's how this felt. And it's frustrating. You know, we mentioned this on the weekly upload from watching an old Godard film, which is like you will watch a scene for 5 minutes, and action set pieces for me are similar. Like the more you can get in that one take, and like just let it linger and let us see what's happening. And it's also like I think it's competently done. Clearly, this movie's made by professional movie makers. But there are some times when it's like the angle switches to like points of like where it feels aggressively like there's speed bumps along the way of enjoying what's happening, where it's like I'm just frustrated. Maybe I'm getting old, you know, maybe that's an old person way of looking at it, but it's like I honestly am like I'm not looking at Scarlett Johansson and the other actors like fighting each other. I'm looking at a bunch of stunt doubles, hidden cuts.
I was going to ask about this.
okay.
I know you've talked in the past about Scarlett Johansson not doing a lot of her own fighting. Was that noticeable here?
Yeah, I mean, and that's how they cut it. Like whenever they're being thrown over, we don't see the face. And again, like I get it. And then she is getting older. I still think she looks better
she
than
looks
I've
great.
ever seen her. By the way, she's still like just one of the most beautiful actors ever. She looks great, and when she's in the shot, it's great. But there's just so much of it with these hidden cuts, and it's just frustrating. I never felt really connected to the action and the hand to hand stuff. I would say for my money, the Winter Soldier, Captain Falcon Boy, that series. Think of the scene when they're all on top of like the moving trucks. That's better than anything that happens hand to hand in this movie.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. That's up there for me.
That's fair.
That was a really solid scene.
I don't mind the scene where they're fighting in their house, like the house scene.
I think that's probably my favorite one. Thinking back right now is when they first meet up and just already seeing the dynamic between them through how they're fighting each other.
What about the scene when all the Black Widows are converging on Natasha?
that's
at
probably
end?
the highlight. And even still, like take both of those scenes, it does not hold a candle to the scene where Bucky and Captain America are where the German police are coming in Civil War, and he's got the shield
It
and
is a
he
good
pops
scene.
the grenade, and then they go down the staircase. It's like that's
well
the
shot.
bar.
That's one of the best moments in the MCU.
Yeah.
I think. Like, that's a
It is
real
well
high
shot.
bar.
I'm not going to deny that.
That's the freaking bar, right? And
Yeah.
you know, to not like for me, like that's what you should be comparing yourself to when you're going out to make a scene like that. And it doesn't all have to be that way. I mean, again, you said it's one of the best shots, but like it just isn't even close. It's like not for me. It's not even doesn't hold a candle.
I still think the film's more visceral than anything that we've seen in the MCU before. There's a scene where Black Widow literally slams her face against like a concrete desk to break her nose.
That was not
and there's
easy to watch,
a lot
yeah.
of blood. More blood than we typically see in an MCU movie.
I don't know. They like in that one scene that I was referencing in Civil War, they literally take one of those police batons and like beat people's heads in and throw them
But
down.
there's no blood.
You're right. She does have a bloody nose, Chris.
Yeah.
Her nose, she gets a nosebleed.
No, but that moment is like
There's
whoa.
a scene where Black Widow falls from a huge height and she's laying on the ground with a visibly broken leg. We see
We do.
David Harbour crush somebody's arm, and he picks it up, and the arm kind of like
God, it was
dangles for a
so
moment.
gross.
This is the most visceral MCU movie that's
Him in
that's
prison
ever
is just
existed.
great as well.
But I don't think
It
it's
shows
consistent.
more damage than any other MCU film.
I
has.
disagree because it's not consistent. I mean, it has this problem. I'll put this blanket on all Marvel movies, which is we see Scarlett Johansson fall off a building. It's like 8 stories. She hits her head. She hits her back.
That was ridiculous.
She hits 3
moment.
times and then lands on her feet like nothing happened.
That
So
was ridiculous.
when shit like that happens, it's like, okay,
That's the most egregious one, though. That one,
would agree
that's
with
the
you.
one that I realized was bad. And I don't
Dude,
look at this
all
stuff
the
well.
bones in her legs would have been broken. The way, even though
Spinal
she
column,
like was kind of stopped along the way, like
With her neck.
the thud that you hear when her 2 legs hit the ground simultaneously, like shattered. I agree with you completely.
Yeah, and it's like, again, we're comparing. It's a hard. I get you. There's a lot of like moments where they show like people's arms hurt and stuff, but I mean, spoiler alert for Endgame. It's like half of Robert Downey Jr.'s face is like blown off. Like that is honestly the most graphic part in all the MCU, as we see our hero like completely charred on one side. So I think it's been, and in the Captain America movies, I think there's brutal things that happen, and it's not like, yeah, we saw the guy's arm break, but we didn't see bone sticking out. You know, I'm saying that. He's just limped, like he's literally just limping.
I would
It
say
is
it's
still
pretty
PG-13.
floppy, bro.
It was
He's got a
disgustingly floppy.
pretty flaccid hand there.
It's fully broken. So just in terms of my last favorite thing, I think conceptually, I mentioned it a bit in non-spoilers, but just this idea of girls being stolen and trafficked around the world on top of, so we talked about Winter Soldier a bit. So that was a form of mind control that is kind of like the old school Manchurian Candidate, Pavlovian sort of mind control. And this is introducing us to like the next step. Chemical, biological
induced, yeah.
mind control. So I thought that was a cool next step in showing her past while also giving us a new take on mind control in the MCU.
Totally agree.
I'm not normally the person to lay down like, hey, let's look deep into the lore here, but I'm going to do it.
Let's go.
The serum dust that fixes their mind control state, it's like it looks like Wanda's powers.
Okay.
I don't think that's the case.
It does look like
visually. I see where you're coming from, though.
Yeah, it had the same. As soon as it happened, it looked like whenever she mind controls people, you know,
Right, their eyes would like glow a little bit. Yeah, I totally
And when the
get
bird
that.
shows up and's like flapping away her dust when she can't do magic on the bird in WandaVision, this is maybe a spoiler for WandaVision, but I agree.
What I'm saying
it does
is
look
it
similar.
Visually, it looks very similar.
but you don't think there's any connection to
I don't.
her cosmic
Yeah,
powers.
I think that's just a coincidence. And
so.
a
Who
design
made this?
choice.
Who made the serum?
They don't. I have no idea. They don't say in the film, right? They don't explicitly state that in the movie. I don't think.
They do not.
But we'll see. We'll see if that becomes a plot point later on in the MCU.
Probably won't.
Don't hold your breath.
Chris, especially around that dust, it'll save you
Yeah, right.
from mind control. Chris, what are some of your favorite moments?
Like I mentioned earlier, I really love the opening maybe 15 minutes of this movie a whole lot when we see, Natasha and Yelena and Melina and Alexei functioning as a standard Midwest family in 1995. It's just fun to watch those actors interact with one another and the characters interact with one another, and they really do seem like they love each other. But not only that, I really love the opening credits sequence of this movie. And yes, we're always joking all the time about like new artists taking old rock songs and then slowing them down into like sadder songs,
Maybe
basically.
out of choir.
And there's a cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit at the very beginning of this movie that I do like, but it is funny that this is becoming like a cliche.
And honestly, it feels out of place because
You think so?
the movie doesn't feel that serious, because it's a Marvel movie. And listen, I'm glad that they have the jokes because that honestly,
As serious. The montage we see at the very beginning, to Brian's point, is little girls being abducted, experimented on, and killed
yeah,
to
and then
become super spies.
in the same movie, you have the Midwest family. This is my biggest gripe with the whole movie, by the way. I was telling Brian.
And it's fair.
David Harbour's character is at the beginning of the movie with a very, very clean American accent.
Yeah.
Because they don't reveal that, they're
Russian.
the Americans, essentially.
Right,
Yeah, right.
exactly. Yeah.
And then as the film progresses, he has what Marvel's known for, which is a very
Horrible foreign accent.
Natasha and what's it from?
It's Wanda and Pietro with their Sokovian accents.
Right, but Rocky and Bullwinkle type.
Boris and Natasha.
Boris and
Yes,
Natasha.
yes.
Like, he's very thick Russian accent. And at one point he goes, and then I make toilet on my toe or something like that. And you're like,
My
he's talking about
father
his-
make toilet on my hands.
and it's like, that guy knows how to say, I went to the bathroom on my feet. Like, that Smells Like Teen Spirit, slow cover, girls getting abducted, lives in the same universe as I went to toilet on my feet.
Right.
And that's my problem with it, is that it's hard to justify that kind of extreme opening. And oh my God.
in terms of setting the tone for where Natasha
Sure.
and Yelena come from, though, and how tragic their childhood was, I think it does it very well.
I like the sequence. I don't know if I like the sequence in this Marvel
In
movie.
the same movie.
In the same movie as
Okay,
those things
okay.
happening. Because it's a very serious thing. And can you imagine? I'm already very interested to go search the QAnon rabbit hole YouTube verse for what this movie means. And anyway, it's a whole other rabbit hole.
I
But
also really like in that opening 15 minutes, also speaking to like the usage of songs in that opening sequence. I like that Yelena's favorite song while she's like 6 years old in America is American Pie.
Okay, wait a
Because
second.
it's talking about like, you know, the destruction of the American dream and like the death of American ideology. And during this scene, they're driving by like high school football fields and like all this Americana.
Yeah.
And it just suits the moment very well,
It does.
considering that Natasha and Yelena have grown up for 3 years now in America. They've been very comfortable, and now they're having to go back to Russia and enter, you know, the Red Room, which is going to be the complete opposite, you know, the death of their American dream, basically.
yeah.
So I thought that was a good idea.
I gotta say, in terms of American Pie, one of my favorite moments when Florence Pugh, David Harbour is trying to relate to Florence Pugh and remind her that he actually cares about her, and he starts singing the song. I was near tears in that moment.
It's a
That
good
was
moment.
really,
It's a
really
good
sweet. I
moment.
think.
Yeah.
It is nice. And then immediately we need some Marvel action.
Of course.
Right. It's interrupted.
And that's the way the kind of the set pieces played for me overall, was like, and you're bored? Are you bored? We hope not. Let's throw in some like not interesting action scenes for some of it.
Yeah, but the family dynamic was definitely, I think, the most captivating part of the whole film for me. I just enjoyed watching these people interact with each other.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite moments was when they go to they meet Rachel Weisz's character for the first time since the beginning, and they're at the farm, and she's telling her how she's controlling the pigs.
Right.
And
What a tense
Holy
moment.
shit!
It
Yes.
is
so tense.
It is tense. And this is where the tone is working really well for me, and where like I want to spend more time with the family drama. And it's like, make just a couple of action set pieces and make them really good. But this is the eternal struggle with Marvel movies. But like that scene works so well. And when she's like, she calls the pig Alexei.
Alexei.
And he's like, you named pig after me. It's so good.
It's like you don't see the resemblance.
And I had made a joke about like Scarlett Johansson pulling off her face mask and really being another Loki.
Before we went into the movie,
Before
Christian
we
made
went
this
into the movie.
joke. Yeah.
And of course, we've got face mask, which they try to play up this like ending scene that is the spy thing. Like they try to add some spy thriller stuff, and
I have to say, and I'm usually the one of the three of us that like knows most about the movie before we go in.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming, and I did not know that was going to happen. So I was genuinely surprised when Natasha pulled off the face mask, and it wasn't Melina after all. It was her confronting Dreykov.
I will say that I really do love the Dreykov, Scarlett Johansson back and forth. That stuff is really good. I like that they took some time, and that it ends with her breaking her own nose to get over the pheromones.
What is it? Cut the nerve? What is the
Cut the nerve.
Yeah.
Oh god!
And I'm like,
It
what?
just freaked. I didn't know what
if
it
you
meant, but it
mess
freaked me out anyway.
Mess that up.
Yeah, and for our listeners,
Knocks herself out.
She has to do it again.
Right.
Continuously pounding.
For our
her.
listeners, every Black Widow is programmed to not be able to hurt Dreykov based on like smelling his pheromones. So she has to sever, I guess, break her nose or sever the nerve so she can no longer smell his pheromones and she's able to touch him. I think that's a cool moment.
And I love that break because it is a foreshadow to what they could do with these movies, because there is this great like think about thematically what that whole scene's about. It's about a man who's controlling a network of like women that he's taking advantage of. Like it's all there. And the movie does a little bit with it, right? And that scene is really the best we get out of her, like not even being able to hurt him and having to like hurt herself in order to like engage in conflict. I thought she was actually going to just destroy his computer.
Yeah,
I
true.
thought I actually thought she had already, when they're like, you have to sever the nerve. I was like, oh, they just went in and snipped it. You know, they could have just because sever the nerve. I didn't know like you could.
I was not ready for her to smash her face. Like I definitely wasn't.
That was
either.
awesome. Though.
Yeah.
No, it was
I
pretty
will
badass.
say Scarlett Johansson is a badass in this movie. I
yeah.
personally think more badass. And again, I'm getting back to this thing where like I think it's more visceral than other MCU movies. But I think she's most badass in this movie out of anything that she's been in the MCU. And she's had a lot of awesome moments, but like I think she's doing the most here in this film.
I don't know. There's a lot of badass moments for Black Widow. I think most of her best moments, besides this showdown she has, are in other movies. 100%. Like Iron Man 2, she comes in and slides down that, like when she's kind of introduced. I think her introduction in it's Iron Man 2, right?
Yes.
Is really cool. I think she's really cool in that movie. I think back to like her stuff in even the Avengers movie. She's got a lot of cool hand-to-hand stuff there. And then, of course...
I'm not saying that like those aren't amazing moments.
They're all better than most of the moments besides the showdown between when all the Black Widows come in and she kind of fights them off. That is very cool. That is up there with favorite moments. I just like think again, this movie is fighting an uphill battle. It's got to fight against all these other things. But for my money, she's most of her best scenes are in other pictures. But it's cool that she gets this one. It has it. I think that saves the movie. I think we can agree on that is like peak cool. I do not want to see Black Widow fall down like 8 flights of stairs and then like land on her feet.
What about like 30,000 feet?
Yeah. Okay, so we have to get Chris. Did you have any more favorite moments? I know I had.
There is a comedic moment that I thought was really funny, and again is kind of strange that it's in the same movie as the "Smells Like Teen Spirit" song that we were talking about earlier.
Child abduction, yep.
Right? And you know, along with conversations about like what hysterectomies and shit, like just removing.
Okay, that was some of the most graphic stuff. Like,
It has to be,
yeah, for sure.
But the gag is after they have rescued Alexei from a Russian prison. He's like, we need to go to St. Petersburg. And Yelena's like, I don't think we have enough gas in the helicopter to get to St. Petersburg.
Yes.
And he's like, we definitely do. Let's just do it. And then immediately cuts to the helicopter crashing in the middle of the Russian countryside. And again, it's a very funny moment and super wacky. And I laughed out loud in the theater. But I will agree with you. It's weird that Looney Tunes thing is also in the same movie as like child abduction.
It's also like looks like shit.
It does. and I'm sure Chris and I are going to have a conversation at some point about the CGI in this movie. But
yeah, no, we can go into that now.
and I also
before
I want
you
to make sure we talk about Taskmaster at some point.
Oh,
We
no,
haven't
no.
even
Oh my
mentioned
gosh.
Taskmaster.
We have to talk about. Well, Brian, go first.
Well, I was just going to say, and this may go against stuff that Kevin Feige has said, but seeing Julia Louis-Dreyfus pop up at the end of this movie, that was unexpected and a cool kind of hint about Florence Pugh continuing on in
Madam
the MCU.
Hydra's original appearance was supposed to be in this movie.
Interesting.
Her cameo in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was supposed to come after we saw her in this movie. But because
I think it still
both
works
scenes
really
are
well.
so interchangeable,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't
You know,
rely
she
on
introduces herself in both. Well, no, she didn't introduce herself in this scene, but she did in
But
The
it's
Falcon and the Winter
implied.
Soldier.
Like, there's kind of implications about her doing work for her.
Yeah. But this one was supposed to come. Sorry, I keep hitting the mic. This one was supposed to come first.
Fix it in post. You know what they didn't fix in post? This goes against something I mentioned after we watched the show, after we watched the movie. Was like there's always this thing about the crunch that these studios have to go through, and with how the CG is always made. And if you don't know kind of what the Marvel machine looks like, to my knowledge, and if you know any more about this, pop-O-Holics@gmail.com, but to my knowledge, the way they kind of organize these is that they will kind of hire up different companies for each action set piece, or maybe a company does a couple of them or something. And as they're going through production, they get these really just the bones of what the animation is going to look like, and they kind of develop from there and add detail. And one of the complaints has always been, they're always coming down to the wire. I mean, even on Captain Falcon Winter Soldier Boy, they were
You cannot say the name for some
Winter
reason.
Falcon, Captain America Man.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier Boy, tell him.
They were saying, we finished the CGI a week ago,
Right.
And so all these houses are doing this, and really the last thing is the adjusting for lighting. And I think there's a little bit of misnomers as far as like what they can fix. Like it has to be shot in a certain way for all the practical stuff they did to actually blend the CG in a good way. Like you have to kind of plan it from the start.
I think we need some more clouds around the floating city in the sky.
Yeah.
handful more clouds.
And maybe Doctor Strange. Just toss Doctor Strange
Yeah.
somewhere in the background.
But for the shots that are not in camera, like there's a ton of shots here that are not characters in camera. One of the complaints has been they just haven't had enough time. This film was delayed a year.
So is it possible though that they just have a cutoff point where it's like we're not putting any more money into this? It's been delayed so long.
But that's what I'm saying. It's just being cheap. Like let's at the end of the day,
Okay,
it's
fair enough,
Disney
yeah.
just being cheap with not giving these animation studios more time or even like the right start. These movies make so much fucking money, okay, and they are pure spectacle. And like this is what Industrial Light and Magic and all these other effects studios put out. And like this is these people's work and portfolio. Like give them more time and resources. Like why are you okay with this? Like you have such a high bar, and like you have the most popular film franchise series. Why does shit look like dog crap in your films? It to me it's unacceptable.
I agree. But I think
and I know that it's hard to make movies. It is. You got Disney money, and this is the most popular film franchise.
I also think this is unacceptable on like a whole other level in that Scarlett Johansson has dedicated 10 years to this fucking franchise.
Right.
And this is going to be her one and only solo film. And yet this has probably some of the worst CGI that I've seen from Marvel in a very, very long time. There have been some things here and there, but like overall the quality of the CG, I was actually almost like taken aback in the theater as we were watching it. I was like, this doesn't look super polished at all. And you're right, it comes down to the way things that are lit in certain scenes. Like the helicopter doesn't look like it's lit correctly when it's falling out of the sky. Like it doesn't look like it's supposed to be there.
I akin it to, there's an app you can get that the Bad Robot put out, J.J. Abrams studio, where you can like film something and it will just add a CG effect. And it actually looks pretty good for like being like a phone app. That's what the helicopter crash looked like.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just feel like it's kind of disrespectful to her as an artist and someone who's given them so much of her life.
She was a producer on this film too.
She was.
Let me ask you guys something, because I am not as savvy in terms of recognizing this stuff, and I was not nearly as taken out of it as you guys were. Once you told me about some of the things, I'm in agreement that it's definitely not top tier. But what did you think of the breakout of jail scene? Because that was actually, we didn't bring it up in favorite moments, but I thought that was a pretty fun scene, and it didn't look incredible, but was that one of the worst
That wasn't
moments?
one of the offenders for me.
Okay.
No.
One of the worst examples is when there's a floating city that's falling and Scarlett Johansson jumps off and there's a fully CGI Scarlett Johansson and it looks like she doesn't have a face.
Wow.
Literally
okay.
doesn't look like she has a face.
That's
There's
terrible.
also the scene right before she jumps off the platform where Yelena is like stabbing the staff into Dreykov's helicopter to blow it up.
Yeah.
It just looks unfinished. Like you can kind of still see the lines around the actresses. Even Scarlett Johansson, it cuts to her at one point with like the flying city crumbling behind her, and you can almost see the green screen lines around them.
Okay, that's unacceptable.
and-
yeah.
And it reminded me of the scene from Tomorrow Never Dies with when he's like surfboarding.
Oh my God, on the
parasailing.
ice wave or whatever?
On the ice wave,
Dear
like
God.
there were parts where you could just, I can see her in a rig
Yeah.
with this green screen behind her.
Yeah.
It's like,
There's also
it's like, what are you doing? You have teams that have made this shit look so awesome, and like short shrift.
yeah, that whole sequence basically, that whole final sequence, there's so many moments where I was just like, why does it look this way? And it's just unacceptable, to be perfectly honest. And I was listening to Cate Shortland speak in an interview recently, the director of the film, and she said she hasn't looked at or touched the movie in a year. So basically, Disney was probably just like about to release it when the
in the
pandemic
can.
hit.
It's done.
They're like, it's done, it's finished. You don't need to look at it. It's fine. But like in reality, they had a whole year to like take a little extra time.
I'm also going, this is the next time we're inviting people back in the theaters. This is good enough. It's like, well, why don't we let's take some more time. Let's throw whatever, a couple $1 million, you're Disney, whatever, like just to like sharpen it up a bit. Like, hey, that scene didn't look so good. I will say, the one thing I will say is I had played the trailer for us recording this. And I will say on my laptop screen with the digital format, some of that stuff looked a little better.
So
Interesting.
the second time I watched it, my wife and I purchased it through Premium Access on Disney Plus. Second viewing, I watched through Disney Plus on my television here at home, and then I came upstairs and watched it on my computer screen. I was going to say the exact same thing. Those scenes didn't look as bad when they weren't on a Dolby.
To be fair, we did
screen.
see it in one of the best formats. You
We
can
did,
see it.
yeah.
But there is something about the smaller like once you lower the resolution,
Right.
Cleans up. Yeah.
quite a bit.
It did.
So, and I had similar problems with Civil War. I think Civil War overall has just better ideas going on. It also has like 18 characters to play with all these different powers and stuff. But there are some like egregiously bad stuff in Civil War that
Especially
looks
with like
better.
Tony and Rhodey.
Tony's head is floating. He's like, I don't want to get in the suit anymore. I'm not getting in a suit. Just put my head on a CG Iron Man outfit.
So question for you guys. Do you think it's possible that they optimized it in some way for the small screen because it was PVOD? Is it possible that would that make the theatrical worse?
No, they canned it.
It would be the same.
It was done.
Okay.
Yeah, and they get a lot of like, they know they have the Disney Plus series, so they know it's going to have a streaming format.
Eventually.
And it could be that, this amount of people are going to see it in film. And I mean, that's what happens with like, if you took, a video game that was at like 2K resolution and you blew it up to a theater size, it would look grainy and, not as polished and smeary.
Yeah.
Whereas when you lower the resolution,
Right.
and the DPI is what you're looking at, which is the pixels per inch. With CG, that's very important. Whereas like you shoot on like film, like classic film, like 35 millimeter is like 8K resolution. It's like 10K, 8K. It's some crazy number because it's blown up that big.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're using digital effects, there's all sorts of formatting and conversion. Anyway, we're getting really in the weeds. What we didn't talk about, and what I do want to mention, because we are running long, is Taskmaster.
Yes.
He's that they are in this film. And this was the one where I came out going, they made Taskmaster, who is a like kind of a Spider-Man-esque villain as far as like quippy, witty. He's kind of a mouth-off, sarcastic character who's pretty jokey, also menacing, but kind of a heel. And they made him a mute woman. And I was like, fans aren't going to love this. And I don't love it either, but not because they made it a mute woman. I'm mad because it's just a nothing burger of a character. There is some tie-in, but before I ramble on too much, Brian, not knowing anything about the Taskmaster, I'd say you're probably the coldest going in. I have experience from the Spider-Man TV shows and from playing the Marvel games and stuff, but your reaction to...
I thought it was well done. So hearing you guys talk about the Taskmaster before, I'm not sure if you guys said he, but I did also assume it was a man, probably because of my biases. But
probably because it's a stocky fucker with a skull face.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous with the costume that they're wearing.
Looks like Batman.
I don't know if it's Batman, but yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I could see it.
There's a lot of armor plating.
Definitely armor plating. What I liked about it is Scarlett Johansson has always talked about having red on her ledger, which I think they even repeat in this movie. But we never have really seen the difficult decisions.
They use it in like a joking term. Go back to favorite moments when Alexei's
Alexei's
saying,
like,
he's dripping.
You have killed, both of you have killed so many people. I'm
Right.
so proud of you.
So to incorporate her getting out of the game, finding eventually her new family with the Avengers, and having to kill a child to do that with the themes of what this movie is doing, I thought that was some of the strongest stuff and a good reveal that maybe I should have seen coming more so than I did, but I really didn't, and I thought it played pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's not bad, but I think I'm having this fanboy moment of, but did you have to use Taskmaster? Did you have to burn that card?
That's part of the reveal. That's like, it's a misdirect for the people who are familiar.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, obviously, I'm not like super fanboy about it. It's like, well, it's fine. It didn't upset me. It didn't make me upset, but I'm also like, I like witty Taskmaster.
Let's say this: none of us brought it up in our favorite moments, so there is that to be said.
Yeah,
No, and I agree with Christian that the character itself is kind of milquetoast, and I agree with Christian. The character itself is kind of milquetoast, but yeah, I guess I'm probably right between both of you, or probably more a little aligned with Christian, and then I really do like what they did with Antonia, is what they're calling Taskmaster instead of Anthony or Anthony. The character's original name is Anthony Masters, and he's like a defected SHIELD agent who got the super soldier serum, and he has this like they call it, it's not photographic memory, it's photographic reflexes basically. So he can mimic anybody's movement just by watching them once. And what they broke it down to here in the film is that they changed it to Dreykov's daughter, who they named Antonia, and instead of it being like a physical skill that she has, she basically has a computer brain. Like after Natasha blew up the little girl, Dreykov went in and essentially turned her into his greatest weapon. And I agree with Christian in that it was cool to see Taskmaster in the MCU. I really do like the design of the costume.
Yeah.
I think it's translated pretty well.
Looks super badass.
They did have to tone down the skull portion of his head for like Chinese audiences. Like you can't have skulls, I guess. It's like a bad omen in China. But overall, the costume is really well adapted. It's just, I was talking to Brian during our break. A lot of fans are viewing this as kind of another Mandarin moment from Iron Man 3, where it's like, why did it have to be this character? You know, like, couldn't you have created a new character or like found something else? You know, and are we going to get a moment a decade from now where Kevin Feige's like, that wasn't the real Taskmaster. Right. Here's the real Taskmaster. And it's more like Anthony Masters from the comic books. But overall, in the narrative of the movie, if we're just talking about like the contained narrative here, I do think the twist works well.
Yeah.
It's just
I think the
a little
Mandarin
disappointing,
works
I guess.
better because it's so funny.
I don't mind the Mandarin.
I love the Mandarin.
I
personally.
like Iron Man 3. I know a lot of people don't like Iron Man 3, but that didn't bother me very much, even though I knew the source material.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it bothers me on two levels. It's that Taskmaster is like kind of a funny villain, which they don't get like a ton of. There's not a ton of in the Marvel. They're usually very self-serious, and Taskmaster is a cool, like, basically evil Spider-Man.
And this one's just mute.
And this one's literally mute. And I think also, so it bothers me on that level. And then it also bothers me because Taskmaster's like very capable.
Yes.
And so to be put up against a bunch of regular humans, and I guess like even Alexei, who's a super soldier, doesn't even really fight him. And it's just kind of like, feels a little wasted. I mean, like Taskmaster has like a crossbow or like a bow and arrow or something. And like he throws Captain America's shield, and it just feels like, to the point of not having super interesting set pieces for my money, it doesn't feel like it's really used a lot. And the whole like learned your moves thing is kind of brought up in the first engagement and then not really addressed. And so it's kind of like
they just show it.
You wasted the literally the spectacle part and kind of the character of Taskmaster to have this subversion. And you know me, I'm a Last Jedi fanboy. I'm all for subversion. I just feel like more so than even the Mandarin. It's like, but then what are you going to do when you want to have an interesting, funny villain? It's like you had a great one and you burned it on a mute woman. Or it's like you could have literally just had a thing that we thought was a robot.
And I will say this.
True. Yeah.
So I will say this. Okay, they've done gender bending before when it comes to villains. Ghost was originally a man in the comic books.
It has nothing. I want to be very clear, and I wanted to be very clear.
No.
I have no problem with Taskmaster being a woman.
That's not what I'm saying.
Just like you have to be a funny woman, which do exist.
And I'm getting to that. So by the end of the movie, Taskmaster has also, or Antonia has also been freed from this chemical mind control, meaning that if they were to bring Antonia back and Taskmaster back in like a Thunderbolts-esque miniseries or movie or whatever you're going to do, they could make her quippy. It's just she wasn't speaking at all.
So many quips from being blown up as a child.
I know. She's just like really dark. She comes from a really dark place, and that's made her very cynical, and she's just like really, she's sarcastic. Sure. You know, they could potentially do that. Yeah. I could see that happening. The reason she didn't talk here is because she's mind controlled the entire movie. But there is a way to like get us to that quippy Taskmaster, I think. It would be a little jarring, maybe, but I think it's possible if that's something that they want to do. And she doesn't die, so she is another kind of like anti-hero-esque character that could potentially join the Thunderbolts. But
Definitely
we'll
has
see.
a chip on her shoulder, I'd imagine.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So, yeah, could be cool. All right. Any final thoughts on Black Widow?
I just want to say, it was, even though this isn't my favorite Marvel movie, like I said, kind of middle of the road, just being in the theater, Christian setting off a chain of
that was great,
insane applause, just feeling that tension. We said it about F9, but it's like, this is what it means to have this sort of experience at the cinema.
Yeah,
collectively.
a communal experience. I agree.
And it was
a communal. It was okay.
Yeah, right.
A collective sigh from all of us. But yeah,
But that's part of it.
Exactly.
And it was highlighted. It was like a better experience for it, you know?
100%.
Which movie? Sorry to interrupt again,
No, you're
Brian.
good.
Which movie did you like more, F9 or Black Widow?
I liked them equal. I really enjoyed going to see them both.
Okay.
I think it's weird. Well, it's not weird. I'm gonna say this. The character beats are way better in the Marvel movie. They felt much more genuine, although they are such similar movies. And I'll get into that in final thoughts. But like, I think the action in F9 is more innovative, and the CG still bad. I think the CG is bad in both of them. But I think there's a lot more funny, actual, genuine character beats happening in this one.
I think I had more fun with F9 personally. I think it nails its tone much more consistently.
Sure.
It would get into spoilers, but I think the emotional moments, because of, even though Scarlett Johansson has a lot of backstory, we have so many established characters with arcs that even though it's not super deep, it gets to a place where it's like, oh, we've culminated in F9 in a way that Black Widow doesn't feel that way.
Okay. Obviously, I would choose Black Widow, but like, I'm just not as big a fan of the Fast franchise. Sure. But I completely understand both of those perspectives, without a doubt. Back to your final thoughts, Brian. Sorry.
No, yeah, I feel bad. Like, I don't want to trash this movie. If you like Marvel movies, you're going to find things to enjoy here. The CG didn't take me out of it as much, so maybe would you guys recommend seeing it on the smaller screen first?
If there's more than a couple people, I'd say if you have a great theater, like going to theater, you're vaccinated or feel comfortable, do it. I will say it probably will look better on Disney Plus. So if you have a group of people you're going to watch it with, it probably looks better on a digital format.
If you have a good home entertainment system, I think you could watch it.
The sound in Dolby was great.
It was.
And I enjoyed it. And these movies have excellent sound. There's a moment where the helicopter's tail flies right to left on the screen, and you heard that perfect, like, 3-dimensional audio, 7.1 sound system. Yeah, that was cool. Definitely nothing to shake a stick at. Very cool.
Yeah, you can't recreate that at home usually.
Yeah, so that is nice. I would say if you do like good sound and you don't have a great sound system, it's always worth it for that. But I do think the digital effects will look better on a smaller screen.
Agreed.
Chris, any final thoughts?
Like we said, this is kind of a middle of the road Marvel movie, and we've already talked about like where we think you should view it. And I don't really have anything to add.
But the most visceral Marvel movie.
I do. I'm still going to hold fast to that.
Sticking to it.
Again, I don't know if like your 8-year-old should watch this Marvel movie.
I don't know if an 8-year-old should watch any Marvel movie. I'm going to put that out there, Chris.
Maybe not. Even a 10-year-old. I don't know. But I think if you were to take a younger child to this movie, you will be having some conversations after the movie about certain things.
I agree that there are, especially the
it puts child abduction into the minds of children. Like, oh, okay, this exists in the world. You're telling me that I could be abducted?
So did Nancy Grace, though.
I think my parents might just give me away.
Right.
Are my parents Russian sleeper agents?
Are my parents even my parents? There'll be some conversations.
I agree. I also have like, it's funny because I understand the context and it totally makes sense why you're bringing this up now. But always like, and I don't know what it's gonna be like when I'm a parent and whatever. But I would always be like, would I show my kid a Marvel movie? No, not until they're 13. Like these movies are fucking violent,
right? Yeah.
True.
And they're not perfectly black and white for the better. I think it makes them better films. But there'd be very few.
I think 11 or 12. I think is acceptable depending on which one it is.
Let's have some kids and find out.
Yeah,
together.
Let's do it.
For my final thoughts, this movie's fine. It's a fine movie.
I'm excited to be back in the theater watching Marvel movies.
It was cool. I wanted to be fair. When we were watching it, the Marvel credits were rolling. I wanted to woo the entire time, but I was like, don't distract the audience. But then it got quiet, and I was like, can't contain it.
I'm glad that you did.
It was fun. It was a fun moment. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it on the Black Widow. I'm interested to rewatch it in a digital format. So let's go downstairs and do that.
About that time?
It's about that time. All right. If you want to find more of us on the internet, you can find us. We have a link down below, a tree of links to all our social media. We also do video content on YouTube and TikTok. So check that out. That's all at Pop-O-Holics or wherever it is in the link tree. I don't know. We got a lot of stuff. If you want a question, comment, or concern, popaholicscast@gmail.com. Email us there. We read every single email that we receive. Chris, what are we talking about next week?
Christian, next week, the Loki series on Disney Plus is going to be concluding, so we are going to be talking about that series as a whole.
Very excited to dive into that conversation. Been enjoying that. Watched a couple episodes on a plane.
And we'll also have James Barnes and Vash from C4S Villains returning to help us break it down.
Very exciting stuff. Looking forward to that. Gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Loyal listeners, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, movies, television, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it.
Yep. Sorry.
And you can find me at True Pop-O-Holic for all of the dad jokes your heart desires.
And you can find my band at Midnight Satire on Spotify, Apple Music. A lot of cool stuff coming out this way. Chris and Brian debuting in a music video.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
That's going to be a little ways away. It's going to be at least 3 to 4 months or something. We'll exclusive there. But should be dropping singles from that in about a month and a half, if my calculations are correct. So very
exciting.
Officially, I haven't heard any of these masters, but if I had, they're sounding absolutely excellent.
Yes, for fans of sad boy music. So look forward to that. And we look forward to delivering another exciting episode of...